today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about direct sales reps. We've talked a lot about referral partners in the past, and we're going to continue to do so. But for those of you who are just joining us, direct reps are really something. It's something that I think is an amazing, untapped resource within our industry. We'll talk a little bit about why they're one of the best referral partners out there. But to get started, I just wanted to review a little bit about why we talk a lot about referral partners. Essentially, no matter what strategy we use in our business, referral partners are always going to be fundamental to executing that strategy. The reason being is every referral partner has a multiplying effect. We can double or triple our efficiency in the sales world by basically splitting up the workload among the referral partners. So it really needs to be a joint effort. In the context of today's call, a direct rep is someone who basically sells products or services as a dedicated employee of a vendor within our industry. There's lots of different direct reps, but we're specifically talking about individuals who sell products and services, the same products and services, but as a dedicated employee. So a lot of people see these guys as our competition, but essentially these guys, as we talked about in the very beginning, they really are the best referral relationships. Now, there's three types of direct reps. There's direct reps who focus on new logo acquisition, managing existing accounts, or a combination of both. Typically, you're going to want to work with the reps who are focused on new logo acquisition. These are the hunters. These are the ones that are probably the most effective, mostly because they're going to be interested in new logo acquisition, but also a lot of the vendors that we work with won't pay you on existing accounts that they're babysitting, even if it is an upsell. And so you're going to have the most success with direct reps who are focused on new logo acquisition and aren't trying to maintain existing accounts. You can have success with any of the three combinations, but typically those are going to be your best bet. Now, the logic behind this sales model is based on the fact that many of the vendors that we work with have a limited product scope. So in most cases, their products are part of a small piece of a larger solution. So an example would be someone selling a phone system needs bandwidth. And oftentimes that bandwidth needs some type of optimization, like an SD-WAN connection. And so the vendors are providing a single part of the solution, and so if you can help them provide other solutions, that's really the basis of this whole equation. Now, the reason why this is so powerful and so helpful is because there's lots of different vendors nowadays that are a catch-all. So if customers go out and build these solutions and add the SD-WAN and the bandwidth and the other components to the overall solution, to whatever they're putting together, if one of the companies that they talk to happens to be a catch-all, they end up catching all of the solution. And so your value proposition to the direct rep is essentially becoming what we call a vendor shield. Now, a vendor shield is basically you can stand in between the customer and the different vendors and help protect that original direct rep's deal from all of these catch-all vendors. It's also important to remember to communicate to the direct rep the ultimate value proposition that you provide, which is becoming a technical contact on the customer's record, which helps you protect them from upsells and future communications from those catch-all vendors to help them keep the original deal that they sold. Now, as we explain our value proposition to these direct reps, it's important to take a valuable lesson from one of the greatest business books of all time, The One Thing. The book basically teaches us that when we're selling and talking about our value proposition to these direct reps or to anyone, it's always optimal to focus on one value proposition at a time. It has a much better effect in terms of impact. And by the way, we'll have the privilege of hearing from the author of The One Thing next month on the 28th, and we'll get you more details on that here in the near future. But just remember, your value proposition isn't the compensation that you're selling. It isn't anything but the value that you bring to protect their customers from the catch-all suppliers. So just remember that if you're bringing up that in the conversation. Now, I wanted to bring up a few examples of companies who have a niche play. So this is a list. This isn't a comprehensive list. These are a few great examples of companies that you would probably want to work with. These are companies who work within the bandwidth space. And for those of you who are just listening in on the phone call and don't have access to the webinar portion, I'm going to go ahead and read off a few of these vendors. But there's Bandwave Systems, FreeWire, Unity Fiber, Wave Business, Viasat, Utah Broadband, Sky River, Sierra Wireless, Hudson Fiber Network, FiberLight, Cogent, Crown Castle, MHO Networks, Telia Carrier. Now, some of these do offer other products outside of bandwidth, but their primary focus is essentially bandwidth. And this is what we talked about in the very beginning. Working with niche providers is the perfect model for us because their products complement other services which we can help provide, which ultimately helps us strengthen our value proposition as a vendor shield. It's also important to remember that a lot of these bandwidth providers make excellent referral partners because, especially within the coax space, there's up to a 30% rejection rate due to lack of availability. So basically, if they can't offer services to a specific customer, 30% of the customers that come to them get rejected just because they can't offer them services. Other vendors also reject customers because they have to have a certain threshold in terms of pricing. And so there's lots of scenarios where it just doesn't make sense, or maybe the pricing isn't right, and maybe they can get better pricing from one of their locations somewhere else. Again, this is where you come in as the vendor shield to help provide an alternative to those customers without actually allowing the direct rep to refer them to their competition. There's also great opportunities within the space today, which is really time sensitive. You'll notice that there's lots of mergers and acquisitions as the broadband providers are continuing to help create greater efficiencies of scale. There's lots of mergers, which creates customer headaches. These customer headaches translates to lost customers. Now, as those customers flee those vendors, this is the perfect time to work with those direct reps in order to help them to help find a safe haven for those customers. So that's something to keep in mind as you're working with them and forming your strategy. And in that scenario, it would be better to work with reps who badly babysit accounts or trying to make money from existing accounts and helping them provide a safe home for them. You also see that there's a lot of different UCaaS providers, and you notice that there are UCaaS providers that provide bandwidth, but there are many that primarily do the UCaaS service itself. So I'm going to read this list off just for our audience who's actually listening in on the phone, but we have 8x8, Adtran, Broadvoice, Call Tower, G12, Jive, which was purchased by another vendor, Mitel, Momentum, Net2Phone, Nextiva, NextVortex, OneStream, RingCentral, Intelligent IP. So these are just examples, not designed to be a comprehensive list. But what's great about UCaaS providers is that a lot of these companies, you'll find it's pretty difficult for them to work in this space. Because if you are a UCaaS provider, you may provide bandwidth, but the pricing isn't always that competitive, and so the customer almost always goes out and gets a third-party vendor. And because they need bandwidth for these solutions, everyone in the world pretty much has a soft switch where they're providing their own hosted voice. And so the second someone brings up bandwidth or hosted voice, it pretty much puts these UCaaS providers at risk of losing the customer to one of the catch-all providers. And so they're, by far, in their product category, is the most at risk of being taken away from someone else because of how prevalent soft switches are across every different vendor within our space. And so in this scenario, it's most relevant for you to be a vendor shield to help them safeguard those accounts that they've worked so hard in acquiring. Now, another great category to work with are data center providers. I won't read off this list. It's a little too long out of sake of time. But I would like to mention that data center providers are by far the most friendly in terms of channel integration or four-legged deals. Basically, because their deals are so complex, they're the most willing, and oftentimes they force you to work with their direct reps. And so working with these relationships are great. The only downside is there's not a lot of opportunities within the data center space as far as frequency goes. These aren't something that come up every day like bandwidth or UCAS. It's not as frequent, and so you're going to see fewer opportunities. They'll be larger, but it will take a little bit longer-term investments. There's also a lot of great IT security providers out there. What's great about this is because IT security is similar to UCAS, where everybody seems to have their own IT security product. And so as these customers engage with their catch-all providers, you'll find that they are also at risk of losing their customers to them as well. SD-WAN is another great referral source because SD-WAN is always designed to be a means to an end. And so there's obviously some other products or service that's being designed to work with SD-WAN. And like UCAS and IT security, everyone seems to have an SD-WAN product. And so if you're working with pure SD-WAN providers, it can get a little bit scary for them to work with their customers and put them at risk of working with other catch-all providers. Another great category to look at is contact centers. There's quite a few companies that specialize in this, and they're also, like the data centers, they're very channel friendly when it comes to integrating and working together. And so in this scenario, there's a lot of great opportunities. A lot of these companies specialize in contact center. It's a little bit less at risk because they do specialize in it, and although there's a lot of companies that offer contact centers as part of their portfolio, it's not as competitive because if you don't specialize in it, it's not as easy to lose those customers. Now, we've talked about a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different product sets, a lot of different companies, but this next section here will help to illustrate how this looks from a channel integration and compensation. So when we talk about channel integration, what we're referring to is the formal program that different vendors have in place to compensate you for deals that you bring to them. Because not only are we trying to get the deals that fall off of the outside of the product scope of these vendors, but we also want to see if we can bring business to them, which really is fundamental to a lot of these relationships within the terms of reciprocity. But we also want to be able to get paid for those deals that we bring to them. And so this graph here, so if you're not on the webinar, you can check this out afterwards, because it's only something we can describe visually. But you can kind of see how different channel programs work, where they sit. And we're trying to find companies within that top right-hand corner where there's a great program where they really encourage working with direct reps, and there isn't any type of commission haircuts for doing so. And so in that area, if you have some interest or some expertise, these are the types of vendors that you want to work with and convert their direct reps into referral partners. Now, some of these referral relationships really need a kickstart. So we're going to talk about, it's basically a trick within LinkedIn to help kickstart some of these referral relationships and how to get the ball rolling. So to get started, if you're in LinkedIn, you're going to go ahead and click on the search bar, and three options will come down. You'll click on People, and then in the top right-hand corner, you're going to click on All Filters. Next, you're going to go ahead and type in the name of the direct rep. Hopefully, you've already connected with them on LinkedIn, because this will make it possible for you to execute this search. So once you've put in the name of the individual where it says Connections Of, you'll click on Second-Degree Connections. And what this reveals is all of the first-degree connections of your direct reps, and it'll basically create a nice customer list. Now, we're not here to mine their customers, but what we want to do is we want to take these companies and plug them into a report known as the Upsell Report. And there's lots of different areas of the Upsell Report, but one of the best areas within this section is the related companies and competitors. Because what this does is we can take the relationships of these direct reps and find the companies who are competitors of those relationships based off of their search engine traffic and start building momentum with those very companies. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, we can jump into the Q&A and afterwards and revisit that. But to get access to the Upsell Report, it's a free report. You just go to upsellreport.com, put in the website, and these reports will be built for you. And ultimately what we're trying to do is, in order to build relationships with these companies and these direct reps, a lot of times it takes a little bit of a deal or two to help get the conversation started. And if we can talk to the competitors of the relationships of them, that'll make it much more powerful. Also, if we're working with bandwidth providers, it might make sense to also talk to the neighbors of the companies that they've worked with or have had success with. You can build tenant lists within the Ensable platform by going to data.ensable.com, and you can just copy and paste any list of addresses here, and it'll build you a really nice tenant list for you. Now, lastly, I just want to touch upon this. We talk about this a lot when we're referring to referral partners. And we talked about the value proposition as a vendor shield and about how that's something that we need to lead with. But we also need to help convey one of the biggest value propositions that we can bring, and that is within the direct sales world, there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of mergers. There's a lot of change. And so one of the top-of-mind values that you can bring to these direct reps is basically a plan B. So it would be unethical to offer direct reps a compensation for the deals that they bring to you on the side. And so you don't want to offer that under the table or setting up their wife or their husband as, say, an agent. But what you want to do is you want to create a separate bank account and say, look, if your company gets bought or if things go sideways or if one day you want to go out and do what I'm doing and become an independent agent, I'll have this bank account set up for you where it's just going to accumulate all the residuals from the deals that you send to me, and you're welcome to come over and work for me as an employee. And so this plan B essentially creates a revenue stream where you can pay for an employee, and they'll basically be paying for their own salary. And so this not only gives them a sense of security, but also a sense of freedom, because it helps build a bridge where a lot of you who have become independent partners have found that that's the biggest challenge in setting up a business relationship. And so you get a free employee, they get the lifestyle and the security that they're looking for, and it's really the greatest value that you can provide long-term for these